The things that I hear the most from our clients today, they want to know what others are experiencing, and there's lots of different best practices. And so, if the clients have that opportunity to interact with one another, that's even more valuable.
Welcome to Unexpected Journey, the show where each week top professionals share work wisdom and life lessons about their careers and what they have learned about human experience in the workplace. I'm your host, Annebibb. On this week's episode, we have Chuck Koskovich, COO of TTech Engage. Chuck is an experienced business executive and dynamic people leader with a demonstrated history of senior leadership roles within leading technology, business process outsourcing, and digital services firms. Chuck's broad leadership experience includes leading large customer support operations and client-facing teams for companies including TTech, Blackberry, Xerox, Concentrix, and TELUS International. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Unexpected Journey. We are so glad that you were able to join us today, Chuck.
And honored to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Chuck, you got involved in the call center industry in a very interesting way.
Yeah, it's a great story, and one I think about often because there's still a lot of parallels to my career today. But had a very good friend who his father actually was working for MCI Telecommunications at the time. And at that time, MCI, this burgeoning company taking on AT&T. And again, it was after divestiture, but it was just this really neat, entrepreneurial company. And my friend said, you ought to go apply there. My dad says there's great opportunities for young people. And so I went over there. I actually applied for a client services role. I had zero experience, so they didn't hire me for that. But they said, Chuck, look, there's this really neat call center opportunity. You should go become a call center agent. I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I had just graduated from college, didn't have a job per se lined up, a full-time job. And so I said, look, this is a neat opportunity for me, and took the opportunity, competed for the role, was able to join. And so I actually started as a frontline agent, and that'll be 32 years coming up here this year, and never looked back. Been in the industry the entire time since.
That journey and what we have learned along the way, and remember that experience of what it felt like to take that call.
Unbelievable. In fact, I still remember, and again, I'm really going to date, but we'll talk about Blackberry in a minute, but date myself when I think about when I first started, because, we had paper training manuals, right? The internet was a thing, but it was not nearly what it was today. Online learning was really nascent. I remember still the paper manuals, the green screen, because again, we worked from multiple monitors and we had a lot of green screen. I don't think GUI was introduced until I was probably a frontline team leader. So, these are, and I was talking with someone just yesterday, and as much as things have changed, honestly, a lot hasn't changed. The way you work in a contact center environment, the way you interact with your folks, all of that, I think is, there's still a lot of those still same principles, but a lot's changed, but it was, it's still that same, I guess, environment. And again, one of the things I thrived on, and I just relished the opportunity I had, because with MCI and then many of the other companies that you noted, just some great foundational for me as I've been able to build my career in this industry.
What I find interesting, though, is that you were with TTech and now you are again with TTech.
Yeah. And after almost 13 years. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost like a full circle.
They had recruited pretty heavily in the Denver area. I had an opportunity to compete for a role there. Even before I went there, I competed for a role as a site leader, opted not to take that role. And that's when I first moved into outsourcing, was doing some different things with a couple of other different firms. But I had an opportunity to join as a vice president, and that was back in 2004. And what a neat opportunity! And again, I was really proud to be part of a company that was headquartered in Denver. Again, a pioneer in the industry. And I spent about 6 years there. Left in 2010 as a senior vice president, having run all of the Americas at that time. So had a nice career jump there. And then took a hiatus. You mentioned it, for nearly 13 years. I actually rejoined this past September. And why I rejoined, there's just so much DNA at the company. I always competed against TTech when I was with TELUS International and Xerox and Concentrix. But there was always a special place in my heart for the leadership, senior leadership team. Ken Tuckman, who founded, still with the company. The company's been in place 40 years just this past fall. And there's just something special about the company, about the brand. And so when I had an opportunity to go back, I didn't look back. And it was just it's been awesome. I did, even though I was gone for so many years, and honestly, it feels like I never left. And it's been really amazing to come back. There's still some amazing people. There's some new people too, but there's some amazing people that are still with the company. And I think we're going to continue to take on and reinvent the industry, if you will. Continue to take on new challenges, new opportunities, both on the Engage business, which I know you want to talk about, but also the digital side of our business, which was also an important element of why I returned.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because you said specifically when we were talking a few weeks ago now, I'm the COO of TTech Engage. I'm not the COO of TTech. I'm the COO of TTech Engage. What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really look at our business in a couple of different ways. The core business, which is largely what you would know as traditional business process outsourcing, customer experience work, but it's broad, right? Everything from we've got an agility side of the business. We do a variety of different capabilities, not only selling, but CX as well as leading to DX services, so digital services. But years ago, several years ago, Ken and the leadership team at TTech founded TTech Digital, which is really a full services digital services company. And the premise was to leverage the great foundation that we had within TTech core business or Teletech at the time, and really spawn that into, many of our clients have needs from a digital services perspective. And so whether it's existing embedded based clients or new prospects, the digital evolution that's happening, customers want and need those services. And so what a unique opportunity to not only we work with some of the biggest and brightest brands in the world today, have an opportunity to serve those customers from a customer experience perspective, but then also help them solve their digital needs as well. And so we made a very intentional effort to keep the company separate. The way we would describe it is they're distinct, but they are connected. And so we go to market, with a digital services brand, TTech Digital, but we also go to market as TTech Engage. And Engage, again, the core BPO traditional CX services that we compete against, the many of the competitors that you mentioned earlier.
Very interesting. Now, one of the things that you do as the COO is manage the operations. And I'm curious, how does the relationship between, as you've done, and you've been an operations leader most of your career, how do you feel that the relationship between operations and really the team that manages the portfolio of the account, whether you call it the account management team or BD or what have you? Some people are calling it customer success now. How does that impact the business? How does that relationship impact the business?
Yeah, it is paramount that they all work together. So at TTech, we have obviously a delivery organization that I have the great responsibility and honor to lead. And then we have a portfolio organization, and these are leaders that, again, really own the client relationship, so to speak. They own not only making sure that we continue to, grow those relationships, that we find new opportunities. And so there's a strong partnership. It has to be a strong partnership between the two. And then we have a complete separate go-to-market team as well. And that has to be, obviously connected. But we have, you mentioned that I've done most of my roles in operations. I did spend, considerable amount of time as a client success leader as well. And so I understand the uniqueness of that and the importance of that, working, to go and understand the needs of the client, make sure that their needs are founded into the commercial agreements and the structure that we provide for them. But those relationships need to be strong, and we partner every single day. In fact, I spend probably a third of my day on with our client success partners and within the portfolios, along with clients, because again, we need to make sure that we're really dovetailed together in terms of the way that the client's expectations are, as well as we're operating the business. And so it is an absolute imperative that we work really closely together, and that we've got shared objectives. In fact, if you looked at our scorecards that we would send out for both the delivery teams as well as the portfolio teams, they essentially are the same scorecard. They've got slightly different weightings because of our different responsibilities, but they're all focused on shareholder value, on client experience, and our frontline team member experience. And then they're underpinned by the corporate values. And so again, while they might have slightly different weightings, we really still look at the same, objectives from shareholder, client, and frontline team member perspectives.
So as you're doing that, and as you mentioned you were in client services at some point, and it's interesting to me how some companies are calling it client services, some call it account management. Some are calling it customer success. And I think client services and customer success are two very different things. But I've seen such a kind of a mishmash and a merge of these terms and job descriptions lately. But they all have to kind of segment the clients and the teams to take care of the clients, because whether it's by verticals, whether it's by size, whether in order to make sure that things are getting taken care of appropriately, um, what have you seen fail? What have you seen be successful as you're putting these away, whether it be from a client services standpoint, whether it be from an operational perspective? You've been here, as you said, 32 years. You've seen a lot. You've done a lot. What's good? What's bad?
Yeah, and I think you're right with respect to the nomenclature for the roles. I've seen business development, account management, client success. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what I think is most important between delivery and we'll call it our portfolio teams, which we have what we call
portfolio teams.
Yeah, so within the portfolio teams we have what we call client success partners. That's the kind of the official role for the individual, she or he that would go and work on behalf of the client, right? To make sure, and TTech, to make sure that we actually can deliver. What I've seen work really well and what I've seen fail. Well, I'll talk about what works really well, and that is just making sure at the end of the day that we understand what the client really needs, right? Every one of us goes to market with our clients and have a master services agreement or a statement of work in place. But when you boil it all down, what I really look to do is to make sure that we've got these service promise excellent metrics in place, and that would be really focused on a balanced scorecard. So what's important on efficiency and effectiveness and CSAT, and so we really try to boil it down, working with our client success partners to go back to the client and make sure, regardless of all of these things that are in these broad statements of works and master services agreements, that we really boil it down to what really matters for the client, what really matters for their end user customers. And so those are the things that we partner on heavily. And I think when we do that, so if I partner heavily with our client success partners to get that right with our clients, and then we embed that into the scorecards for our frontline teams, that to me is where I see success. I think when we don't do that, and when we're not engaged, and when we don't have that strong, multi-level function with the client. So, for example, our client success partners, they take prime on the client relationships. That being said, the delivery folks are absolutely paramount in those as well. And so we spend a lot of time working together, traveling together, on client premise together, in the delivery operations together, because again, that's how I think you bring it all together. So when those things aren't working well together, and when you don't take that approach, and that's when I find that you drop the ball for the client, or you drop the ball for the frontline teams, and then there isn't that opportunity to best serve at the end of the day the end user customer.
That's a really good point. And I think that I'd like to dig in a little bit more when it comes into kind of talking about balancing the client needs, the business needs, and the employee needs, because you can't make everybody happy all the time. But we've got three things to look at whenever we are looking at our relationships with our programs and our clients. We've got what's good for the client. We've got what's good for our employees. We've got what's good for the business. And in a perfect world, they would all line up. But sometimes that doesn't happen. And you are generally right in the mix. You're right at center stage trying to line all of those things up. So, how do you, and unfortunately, our employees are oftentimes the ones that are dealing with the brunt of it, because from a contractual standpoint, we do what we can to make the first two, the client and the business needs, meet. How are you, from an operational standpoint, the COO, the leader of operations, the big man, really handling those employee needs and what's coming up from that in this world today?
Yeah, and as a member of the team, and obviously having had the opportunity, because again at Blackberry, I was on the other side of the fence,
You were
right?
on the other side, right? You were the person who was dealing with the decisions that people were making.
Absolutely. And I remember working with the teams that we had worked with a couple of great partners at that time. And that was really my job, was to help, build out that, outsourcing strategy. Most of the work
Mhm.
in-house at the time. So I remember those experiences today, even because again, as someone on the other side of the fence, when you make decisions about, metrics, or, locations that you serve, or volumes, and the way you work with your partners, it can have significant impact. I think it's important to start, working with companies that share your values. I guess that's the easiest way I can say it. And I think we're real intentional about that. There's companies that perhaps wouldn't share our values that may not be a great fit to work with, and maybe they drive too much occupancy, or they drive different behaviors that will not allow us to help achieve our mission. We know in this industry, if you can obviously keep an engaged workforce, they generally will stay with you longer, and if they stay with you longer, they generally will perform better. I know that sounds pretty elementary, but those are really, I believe, still the basic building blocks.
That sounds like call center 101.
It really is. And I think there are, if you don't have alignment though with the clients, right? And if you don't have shared values, that can be disrupted very, very quickly. And then to your point, you can have your employees hanging in the balance, right? They could be burned out, they can be stressed out, and then ultimately, they choose to go find a different career. And so I spend my time a lot in the middle of all of that. One, to make sure that, and again, underpinning all of this, it starts with a good relationship, right? So when we go and work with a customer, we don't wait until there's a problem, right? We go spend time with them and understand what's going on in their business, right? We go to the earnings report, we read their 10K, we understand what's going on in their business cycles, so we can help them as they go through. Because companies are going to go through, just like all of us, they're going to go through ups and downs, and I think it's important to understand those business trends. And so when they see swings in volumes, or they see changes or challenges with their business, business climate, and they work with multiple suppliers, one, we want to be the best so they continue to keep work with us, but we want to make sure that we understand those things, and so we can react to those things more quickly, so we don't have employees hanging in the balance. But no, it's an ongoing effort. And so I think, again, it's choosing who you work with pretty wisely. So making sure that you align your values with the customers that you work with, partners that you work with. It's making sure that you've got the right, agreements in place that allow for a fair and balanced operating environment. And then it's making sure that you nurture those relationships. And I learned from some great, great individuals in this industry the power of making sure that you spend time with your clients, not just when you need, volume, or when you need more work, but when you need to make sure you understand what their business looks like. And so I spend a lot
Can
of
you
time.
say that again? Because I think so many people forget that piece. That's a really important piece. Spend time, not just with
Yeah,
your clients, right? But with your employees, with your peers, spending time no matter what's happening, not just when you need something,
it is
not just
fair.
when things are bad. That's such an important thing.
And I think that goes across so many different things in business and life, right? And again, I think the people that I surround myself that press into the relationships, right? Those are the people that I see get more. And again, in an honest and authentic way, right? Not just to do it, but and again, so we really try to make an effort here. And again, I mentioned before, but I learned from some great people just the power of that. And it's nurturing the relationships. It's calling on your clients and again, the companies. I've been so fortunate to work with so many great companies, but where we've went and spent time in our delivery operations, right? And broken bread with our employees, had meals with them, had one-on-ones with them, skip levels with them, and just listen, right? And understand what's going on. I mean, you can learn so much. And it goes the same with clients. If you just really understand what their priorities are, that's why I like to come back to what I mentioned before. And really, again, we get hung up on the commercial agreements that we have in place. And I understand that those are really important. But when you really boil it down to what matters for the customers, and if you can really get those metrics that matter and get those on your employee scorecards, it opens everything up. It changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. And generally, you have a better chance of serving them and then their end user customers. And in our business, that allows you to stay with that customer and potentially even grow with that customer.
That is really true. And without naming names, can you give us some information about maybe your most successful program? Why was it successful? Is it something that your client has done? Is it something that you've done? Maybe all of the above?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a joint effort for sure. It's certainly not one sided. Here at TTech, and again, one of the reasons I came back, we've got some 20-year, 25-year relationships, right? One of the financial services companies that we have today was here when I left TTech the first time, and the company's still thriving. It's obviously a brand that you would know very well, and it's one where we've been able to maintain that relationship over. It's like 22 years in now. And it's interesting because, one of the senior leaders is still with that firm. And it was so awesome to come back and reconnect with him as I came back to TTech. And that individual serves on our client advisory board. We've got just a great relationship with this firm. But it's a two-way street, right? And there hasn't been easy times, right? We went through, the financial crisis, years ago. Volumes have, obviously changed. Lines of business have changed. They've had leadership changes on their end, but the core principles, I think, between both companies have always been that we're going to make sure that we focus on the end user customer. And I think the way the not only the relationship has blossomed, but the way the commercial terms, everything, it's not about the contract. It's about what do we need to do to make sure that we're providing world-class service to our customers. And I think if you can keep that as the North Star, then generally you're going to have a better outcome. And again, I think that's what allows these long-term relationships to flourish. So that's one great example, Anne. And again, I think there's many others, including with some of the other firms I've been with, where you've had these long-term relationships. But generally, again, it's just establishing the key things and really focusing on what really matters. And in this case, because we serve our clients who have end user customers, the end user customer has to be in the balance there. They need to be the ones that we're focusing on.
I love hearing that a client that has been with you for that long is on your client advisory board. That to me is amazing. And it feels like that is potentially a reason why they have been with you that long and that you're still listening. I am a huge fan of setting up customer advisory boards. I help other organizations do that. One of the biggest challenges that I have to help organizations overcome is on that first one, what is the agenda? Because there is this innate desire to present instead of listen. And, so when you're having your client advisory boards, was that struggle there to?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the other thing, there's not only that, I think from the client's perspective, they don't want to be sold to either. I think that's something that I've also picked up on. Because again, we bring in a lot of folks to present and share our vision and our story, and we really want them to know. But it has to be done, in my opinion, and again, what I've seen work really well is what you said. It needs to be an opportunity to listen. And so there's several things we do. And again, the team that leads that within TTech has done an amazing job. I had an opportunity just after I rejoined in October to spend time at the client advisory board meeting in Denver with the cab that we have. And again, what an awesome group, again, across all different industries. The individual that I mentioned before participating, we have, folks that are brand new, to TTech. So we use across a variety of different industries, but we've got, folks that have been on, or with the company, or excuse me, we've been serving for over 20 years. I think it's setting up the agenda so we listen. And so our CEO of TTech Engage and president of TTech, Shelley Swanback, had a session just with our clients, right? Nobody else in the room. And it was their opportunity to say, this is where we see our company going. This is, we'd love to get your vision, Shelley. And they shared some really valuable stuff. And some of it we never learned. And, Shelley's going to take some of that and use that as we continue to, to unfold our strategy. I think the other piece is we always allow our clients to go and have time together without us. And I think that's also, I think invaluable. And I think that also brings them back to the client advisory board because they feed off one another, without TTech in the way, so to speak. And so I think that is always huge. And then just to validate that we're thinking about the right things, right? In those most recent session, there was a lot of focus on labor, given what's going on with the labor dynamic and geo expansion and, different things that's happening across the globe. But I think if you keep the focus on that, if you keep it focused on listening, allowing the clients to engage with one another and not sell in an overtly way, I think they can be extremely powerful sessions.
The general rule of thumb that I've always used in a cab is the client should be, unless it's those one-off sessions. I love Shelley having the one-off where it's just her in the cab. The general is 80% of the client talking, 20% you talking. That 80% should be you listening. The rest of it is, yes, updating them on what's going on with your organization, that you listened to the last session. What have you done with what you learned from last time? It should be a very small portion of what you are sharing versus what they are telling, and you're listening and you're learning from them. And I love that you're letting them, talk to each other and learn. That is also something that I am very for and tell people. And the fear that ignites of, we're going to let our clients talk to each other. Why not? what's the problem?
Powerful. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I hear the most from our clients today, if I'm with them in a session, maybe on premise at a location, is they don't want secrets, they don't want trade secrets, but
Mhm.
they want to know what others are experiencing. And
With
a
the
company,
labor market
yeah,
and other things.
and in a company of our size, we have the good fortune of working with some great brands, and there's lots of different best practices. And so, if the clients have that opportunity to interact with one another, that's even more valuable. But they're always looking for leaders in the industry such as TTech to share those best practices, both in that way, and then again through the clients having those relationships, and they of course I'm assuming carry those relationships on outside of the client advisory board. But it's I think it gives all of us an opportunity to better ourselves and the industry, and ultimately the experience that we provide to the marketplace.
So, looking back over your journey, is there anything you would change?
I think maybe spending a little bit more time. One area that I really never spent time on in the industry was within HR and in finance. And again, I have such respect for those organizations. And I always thought if I went back to school, because I have a master's, but it's in organizational management, which is very fitting for what I do. But I always thought, getting an MBA, because again, I think that's an area that I think is so important in this industry, in all industry and business. But I would maybe spend time. I'd love to, and again, I think that maybe you never know, but I think having an opportunity to serve as a CHRO, or having an opportunity, because I think that those different experiences can just help better around you as well. I spent the vast majority of my time in frontline delivery operations and client success, which has been just fabulous. I'm so blessed. But I'd say I would have loved to have an opportunity to do maybe a stint in one of those organizations as well.
So, we have a lot of listeners, and across all levels of employment, from the C suite down to VPs, directors, senior managers, and some of our managers and directors they're looking to work their way up. They want to eventually be in the C suite. So, what is your advice to the managers and directors out there who are watching and they want to move up into the C suite someday?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that I would leave. I think first and foremost, it comes down to being humble and never forgetting where your roots are. And again, we talked a lot about starting as a frontline agent, and I have never forgotten that. And I know we didn't mention here, I think we did in our earlier talks, but I look at the team leaders, the frontline operations managers, and those are still today the most important people in our company. And again, so for those that are in those roles today and that have aspirations of doing something more, continue to press into that, because you're in an amazing training ground. And again, I was with some great companies that I had the great opportunity to learn and grow and work alongside others. I think it's listening to your leaders. It's surrounding yourself with good people. There's no way that we get done what we do here at TTech without being surrounded by great people. I continue to, when I work with a leader that is on my team, one of the things that I talk about is, look, I can't operate your business from an airplane, or Dallas, Texas, where I live, or from Denver, where our HQ is. These leaders have huge responsibilities, and they've got keys to run those operations. So you've got to be surrounded by great people. So I would say surround yourself with great people. Continue to learn, continue to listen. I think we talked a lot about that on this podcast, Anne. And again, whether it's to your clients or to your frontline teams, making intentional efforts to do that. And then I think, as we also talked about, building relationships. I build relationships across the aisle and across different organizations, not just when you need them, but before you need them. I think that's really important to do. And again, I'd say, and work your butt off. I think for me, I put in extra hours. I still remember those days at MCI. Any opportunity I could take on extra hours, do different things. And maybe I'll say this too. This industry in particular has allowed you, I always talk about it, you can kind of tip your toe in if you want, or you can kind of submerge yourself. And I think I've been very blessed to work in a lot of different circles. But when those chances have come, I've worked to go get them. And I think that's the other thing. Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. If there's an opportunity and you've put in the time and you've got the experience, then go compete for it, and then work your butt off there, and then that'll lead to the next opportunity for you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Chuck. Really appreciate it. If somebody wants to reach out to you, one, Why would they reach out to you? And two, how would they reach out to you?
Yeah. So look, I love to mentor. I've had some great mentors along my career, and so I get a lot of people reaching out on LinkedIn. So I'm certainly available on LinkedIn. You can find me, Chuck Koskovich, and I'm also. I think that's probably the easiest place, Anne, to be honest with you. So maybe I'll leave it at that. I don't use Twitter, and so maybe some of the other social media platforms, but LinkedIn's a great way, and I'd love to connect with you. And so please reach out. And again, for anything at all, I mean, whether it's mentoring advice or if your firm's, maybe you're looking for, leadership, I've got a good network of, colleagues out there that I could refer. Maybe there's a way that we could serve you here at TTech. Again, any of those ways, or just to say hello, I'd be honored to connect.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for joining us on Unexpected Journey. Really had a great talk today, and we will see everyone next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks all.
As we wrap the episode up, we would like to take this time to thank you for joining us this week on Unexpected Journey. Our guest information will be linked in the episode description, along with a link to our company website, remoteevolution.com, and our host website, annebibb.com. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode and we can continue to bring them to you. Let us know your thoughts on what we discussed in the comments section. And once again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next week for another episode of Unexpected Journey.